You're listening to Win the Day with James Whittaker.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Broadcasting from Los Angeles, California. Here's your host, James Whittaker.
Let's go!
Welcome to episode 27 of Win the Day. The quote for today's episode comes from Robert F. Kennedy and says, "Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly." It's a wonderful quote to set the tone for what we'll talk about in this episode with our special guest, George Chanos, and of course to remind us of the importance of being proactive in such an uncertain time. I first met George in 2019 when we were speaking at the same event in San Diego. I was incredibly impressed, not just with his knowledge of future trends, but with how passionate he was about finding opportunity in them. That night, I had dinner with George, and we had a very vibrant conversation about politics, foreign policy, and just about everything else. He is extremely eloquent, infectiously passionate, and has a lifetime of real-world business experience, as well as perspectives from high levels of public office. George served as Attorney General of Nevada, where he oversaw the entire state's Justice Department. He has even argued, successfully might I add, in front of the United States Supreme Court. Since leaving office, he has established a career as an accomplished speaker, author, and businessman, including as chairman of one of the fastest growing franchises in the country. His two biggest passions are first, learning about the future, and second, interpreting that future to help younger generations thrive in what will be an era of unprecedented transformation. In many ways, the future is scary as hell. George tells of the technological tsunami that will revolutionize the world in the next 30 years and that we're already knee-deep in it without even knowing. In his latest book, Millennial Samurai, George equips younger generations with the concepts, the blueprints, and the resources to thrive in this future. Given the uncertainty we're facing right now with COVID-19, I thought this was great timing to have him on the show. In this wide-ranging interview, we cover politics, quarantine, artificial intelligence, automation, how to pivot for sustained success, and a whole lot more. George also shares the one thing that he believes is the biggest risk for the entire world. And no, it's not climate change or rogue viruses like COVID-19. And I should make an admission here, I am absolutely fascinated by US politics and have been since I moved here 7 years ago. Every single bit of it. I mean, the stakes are so high, the battles are so fierce, and it's like the ultimate game of chess. George has an incredible insight into politics from many sides to give us an idea of what's really going on behind the scenes and how the power shifts will play out. Technology will transform the future more than we ever thought possible, and George is here to help you use it to your advantage. And he's also got a special free gift for everyone who is listening to this podcast or watching the show on YouTube, so stay tuned for that. Without further ado, let's welcome George Chanos. All right, George. Well, super excited to have you on the show. I know it's been about a year or so since we saw each other, but we've got a lot to talk about. You know, we can talk about COVID, we could talk about politics, we could talk about your amazing new book, Millennial Samurai, and so many other topics. So thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's always great to see you, and look forward to seeing you again when we're in LA.
Absolutely. And former Attorney General of Nevada, are there any biases that you want to get out of the way publicly before we get into the interview?
You know, I have a bias for the truth. I really I have a reverence for the law and for the truth, and you know, I used to serve as Nevada's Attorney General at the time. I was a Republican, but in 2016, I was so disgusted with the choice that my party had given me that I left the party and I became nonpartisan. And I wasn't happy with either choice. I wasn't happy with Hillary Clinton, and I wasn't happy with Donald Trump. I think that in a country of 335 million people, we can do better. I think that we deserve better, and you know, that's my bias. So I don't lean one way or the other. I'm pretty much of a centrist. I consider myself a centrist, but the goalposts are moving rapidly. So who knows where you may find me? Some people who are, you know, more to the left of me would, you know, might think I'm conservative. I can tell you that many who are conservative would never in a million years call me conservative. So, make your own judgment.
I love it. Well, one of the reasons I was so excited to chat to you today and get you on the show was because I know that you do have that pursuit of truth, and all your Facebook posts and everything that comes out. It's really refreshing at a time when people just go and read from the one source to confirm their own bias, whether they consciously know it or not. Do you feel that whoever is in power, whether it's the president of America or the prime minister of the UK or Australia, do you feel like it's a little bit of a poisoned chalice in the social media world that we're in and having to deal with things like COVID? Is it a bit of a poisoned chalice just being in office at the moment?
Meaning that it's difficult because they've got these incredible challenges that they're trying to deal with, and no matter who's there is going to stumble and have difficulty.
Yeah, a bit of a lose-lose scenario.
Yeah. So I do, and I feel sorry for Donald Trump in that respect, and other world leaders that are having to deal with this incredibly enormous challenge. It's a 100-year pandemic. We haven't seen anything like this in our lifetime. And the impact, both in terms of, health complications, loss of life, economic disruption, economic carnage, it's just been incredible. And what's even more amazing is that I was telling someone on the phone today that, we're all looking at COVID-19 and we're thinking that, this is just the greatest chaotic type of event that any of us have experienced. And what most people don't realize is that there's a lot more change on the horizon. And it's not pandemic change, but it's technological change. And it's going to cause a level of disruption that is equal to the pandemic that we're now facing, or greater. So these are some of the things that I'm researching and that I'm writing about, is that I believe that, so first of all, to back up a little bit, my history is that for 30 years, I've been advising businesses, high net worth individuals, including, some governors and billionaires, about how to solve complex problems. And in doing that, I've had to try to look for red flags. I've had to try to look beyond the horizon of what's in front of me to anticipate problems that are ahead or that might, rear themselves or show themselves. And in researching the next 30 years, which is what I've been spending the last 5 years doing, in researching the next 30 years, I see what I believe is nothing less than a technological tsunami on the horizon that will create radical change and radical disruption. Automation will displace millions and millions of jobs. And unlike COVID-19, which is a temporary displacement, COVID-19 is here today and gone tomorrow. It's going to be gone in 18 months. There's going to be a vaccine, and we're going to get past that. But automation is here to stay, and automation will redefine life as we know it, and artificial intelligence will redefine life as we know it. And those changes are going to be even more dramatic than the changes that we're going through now, and they're coming in the next 5, 10, 15, and 20, and 30 years.
So what about in the different times like the Industrial Revolution, where people have always said when it comes to technology, humans will become redundant as far as the contributions that we can make to business and the economy and everything else. Everything's going to start to be automated. Why is this different based on all the research and things that you've done than some of those different times like the Industrial Revolution that was supposed to lead to, millions and millions or billions and billions of humans being out of work?
Yeah, so there are a number of differences. One of the first differences is that the Industrial Revolution, from an agrarian society, we moved from an agrarian society to an industrial society. And so there was still very much a place for humans, right? It was just, instead of holding a plow, You might be holding a telescope or a microscope, or working in a steel mill, or doing something else that required your human involvement. Today, the technological revolution, there are two main differences. Number one, we're not talking about humans reskilling for a new type of engagement. We're talking about automation. We're talking about machines replacing humans in the workforce, right? So let me give you an example. The Adidas has recently built something called the Speed Factory, okay? And in the past, Adidas would manufacture their tennis shoes. They would take the raw materials, the fabrics and the rubber and the molds and those things, and all these things would be either shipped off to Asia, right? Some of the molds may have been made there, but the fabrics may have been made in Europe and shipped to Asia. And the assembly, the actual manufacturing of the shoe, would occur in Asia because of low-cost labor. And then the finished product would be shipped back to Europe for sale in Europe and Asia and North America. That was the model. Today, the Speed Factory that Adidas is operating, their tennis shoes are made by robots. They no longer have to ship the raw materials to Southeast Asia and then have everything shipped back to Europe. Everything is done in Europe, where the raw materials come from there, the molds are made there, the shoes are manufactured and assembled there, and they've eliminated millions of jobs of people, low-cost labor in Southeast Asia. That trend is going to continue. So anything that can be automated eventually will be automated. And McKinsey & Company, which is a global consulting firm, says that today, 47%, McKinsey estimates 47% of US jobs are currently susceptible to automation based on existing technology. So we're not even talking about future technology. We're talking about the technology is there today to take away half of our jobs. Now, there will always be this economic incentive to do that because, especially now, look at this pandemic, right? So in a pandemic, you have people that are calling in sick. You may have furloughed them or laid them off. They may be going and now getting other jobs. They may be on unemployment. You have sick leave. You have hospitalization. You have insurance bills. You have all these issues. You can't work these workers 24 hours a day, right? And you have to cater to their human needs, right? Well, let's take Amazon, for example. Amazon hires a bunch of human beings to sort packages, right? And they pay them based on how many packages they can sort in a given time with a certain level of accuracy, right? So they want them to be 99.9% accurate or 100% accurate, and they want them to move quickly, right? Without making any mistakes. This is the ideal employee, right? And they hire humans to do this, right? Well, 3 weeks ago, a company called Convariant came out with a robot, which for the first time, this never existed before because robotics is evolving, right? And sometimes the robots don't have the dexterity to sort packages. Sometimes they don't have the recognition capability to differentiate between the reflective properties of a packaging or to be able to spot, the type styles and the different barcodes and the different designs and configurations of all these different types of packages made all over the world with, all different standards, right? So you have to create an artificial intelligence and a robotic that has the ability to do that, which is a very complicated task. And up until last month, they couldn't do it. Well, now Convariant has a robot that can sort 10,000 separate SKUs, packages, 10,000. They can do it at a speed that would put any Amazon employee that operated at that speed into the bonus category of payment. So they'd be paid more You'd have to pay them more to do it at this speed. And they do it with 99.9% accuracy. This machine Convariant has.
What's the previous level of accuracy for humans?
They couldn't even do it. They couldn't even do it really because they didn't have. So the machine has to actually have the dexterity to be able to grab these packages, right? And then it has to read them, and then it has to sort them and move them around, and it has to do all of that very, very quickly. And there was never a robot that could do it up until last month, right? So these are the types of evolution in technology that we should be expecting. This is coming. This is here. To a large degree, this is here, okay? Number one job for an American male today is truck driver. Chrysler Dahmer was testing driverless trucks on Nevada's highways in 2017. Mercedes has a truck right now that does cross-country trips, and the driver, is non-essential, right? Now today, these drivers, they still have a driver in the vehicle, but the machine is doing all the driving. The driver's doing nothing. But in a few years, right, they're not going to need to put that driver in the vehicle. They're just gonna have somebody sitting at a computer laptop, and that person is going to send off a fleet of these trucks that are going to go cross country in a caravan, and they're not going to need any humans to drive them, right? There are so many jobs that fit into this category. Journalists, right? Journalists are going to become non-essential. The Amazon, which owns the Washington Post, has an algorithm already where an editor can type in a request, a one-sentence request. Give me a 750-word article on why Donald Trump will lose in 2020. That machine will generate a 750-word article on that subject. Now, let's say it was even more controversial subject. Give me a 750-word article on why Hillary Clinton is a traitor. Now, if I were an editor and you were a liberal journalist and I were to go to you and I were to say, give me a 750-word article on why Hillary Clinton is a traitor, you might say, I'm not writing that article. I wouldn't write such an article because I don't believe she is a traitor. Okay, many people would say that, right? And I certainly don't believe that, but many people would say that. I don't believe she is a traitor. A decent, human being, but she's just not somebody I would want as president. But anyway, the point is that an editor would have to deal with the moral qualms of the journalist, and they would have a discussion over whether or not this is even an article that should be written. Right? But let's say the editor doesn't want to have that discussion. Let's say the editor has a point of view that they want to push out on the American public or on the world. Now they have a computer that will create that article for them. Amazon ran 500 of these articles during the 2016 election that were all generated by computer. No human being authored these articles. And yet they received 500,000 likes. And no one knew that they were written by a machine. Now, Amazon is licensing that technology to various newspapers around the world. Well, if you think about the implications of some of these things, one implication is that it puts a lot of journalists out of work. Another implication is that it gives immense power to somebody who decides that they want to purchase that algorithm and use that technology to create information that they want to distribute widely through social media. We have the democratization of media. We have advances in technology that now allow for the creation of material that can go onto that democratized media. We have videos where there's new video technology. There's a video out of Barack Obama giving a speech that he never made, right? So they take hundreds of thousands, millions of images of his voice and of his facial movements, and they can reconstruct a video It's just like you watching me right now and believing that it's me talking to you.
I've seen them. They're scary, aren't they? Yeah.
And they now have the ability to have Donald Trump sit in front of a screen and you're watching him and you're thinking it's him, and he might be saying things that could start a war. And it's not him. It's a video that has been created by artificial intelligence. So when you think about the implications of all of these things, the World Economic Forum was forecasting significant economic disruption from automation over the next 5 years, and they were forecasting this before the pandemic. So they were saying we're going to have significant economic disruption without the pandemic. And now we've got the pandemic layered on top of it. And then we're going to emerge from the pandemic and we're going to get hit by another wave of automation. And the problem is that people aren't ready. So another difference between this and the Industrial Revolution is how people aren't ready and how we're not ready to train them. So if you look at the education system that we have in the United States was born out of the Industrial Revolution. We were going to take our people from the farms and we were going to ask them to work in factories. So we had to educate them. So we created the public education system. Well, now we have a quantum leap where we're moving from the industrial age to the technological revolution. And we need a new education system for the technological revolution because it's nothing like the Industrial Revolution. And yet we have this antiquated education system so you have jobs, you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs in the United States that cannot be filled because we don't have people who understand the technology and the needs of those jobs, right? So we need a whole retooling of our entire education system.
So many questions, George. There's about a million different in my head. I feel like I need one of these Amazon algorithms to help unpackage all these questions to ask you. In Australia, when the whole Uber thing happened and Uber came over to Australia, I remember sitting in a cab from the airport. All my family and things are back in Australia, and the cab driver, I think it's about $200,000 or $250,000 that you pay for a cab driver license. Which, then you can have drivers to go and drive your cab and do all those different things. And I believe the government contributed to people who had bought a taxi license, a taxi license. So the government was saying basically because this innovation came in from Uber, I'm sure there's issues around foreign ownership and different things with that too. But at what point does the government have to pay for an industry that has not evolved and innovated as quickly as it should have? Because on the one side, you think, well, Uber is a fantastic product. When it launched, people were sick of taxis. They didn't like, they were never looked after. They stunk. You were worried that the taxi driver would take you in the wrong place. You'd even have to pull out your credit card to pay or pay cash. Whereas something like Uber comes along, you get a bottle of water, it's the most direct route, you don't need to touch your wallet, and you can even have your playlist on when you're in there. So what is the government obligation as some of this technological innovation comes through?
Well, that's an interesting question, So it's I have to unpack that question because it has a lot of different elements to it. So first of all, we as consumers, we want the best solution, right? If the best solution is Uber, that's what we want, right? We don't want to be, forced to be riding around in horses and buggies because the government doesn't want to let Uber in because they're trying to, safeguard the horse and buggy industry. Well, same thing with taxis, right? On the other hand, if the government is charging you $250,000 to have this license, at the time that you probably paid that, there was probably an expectation on both sides that this license would have a lifespan of X and that you would amortize those costs, those $250,000 costs over the life of the value of this license. Well, if you're going to cut short the value of that license by allowing a competitor industry to come in, you don't block the door to the competitor industry, but maybe you owe a bit of a refund to the guy who paid you a $250,000 fee for a license that you've now essentially made valueless, right? And although the choice of making it valueless is eminently understandable, and if the government had done nothing to tax this industry and had just, the industry was doing what it was doing and it got replaced by Uber, then the government's not involved. They never were involved. They don't need to be involved. But in this case that you've described, if I were representing the taxi company, I'd be saying, my guys are entitled to a bit of a refund here, right? So that's one issue. The other issue is, what does government do? What is government involvement in these types of things, like universal basic income? Okay, so now in the halls of Congress, they are discussing universal basic income more seriously than ever. And the reason that they're discussing it is that they know that there is a tsunami of technological change on the horizon. And they know that it is going to eliminate millions of jobs. And so they know that there are going to be these people that are going to be jobless. And what are they going to do? Are they going to allow them to starve? Do they think that they will starve peacefully, right, in silence? Or do they think that they will cause social disruption, right, that might make it dangerous for everyone, right? So government has to manage all of this. And this is nothing new. You go back into ancient Rome. And in ancient Rome, they built the Colosseums. And they had these gladiatorial fights. And why was that? Why did they do that? They did that specifically as this was the gift of the emperor to the society. The emperor was gifting this to the society. Here are the games. I've given you the games, right? Why? Well, because you're starving and you're living in dysentery and your life sucks. And so, but I'm your leader and I expect you to pay taxes. And,
here's a distraction.
I've got to entertain you. I've got to distract you, right? So government is always in the business of not only providing for its population, but managing the expectations and the lives to a certain degree of its population. Now, there's a big, philosophical debate over this about how much government should be involved and how much we should be on our own. And I basically believe that less government is better if you can do it, right? If in the best of all cases is we don't need government and people can manage nicely without them and nobody is starving and we're all doing well and we're all thriving. But that's not always the case. So sometimes you need government in certain areas. So then you have to make choices because sometimes when you involve government, it takes away certain freedoms, right? So for example, the pandemic is another beautiful example. In the United States, we have all these freedoms and all these civil liberties, right? We get to protest. We get to gather together.
Freedom of assembly, yeah.
We get to say what we want to say, right? So if we want to have a march on Washington of 1 million people, hey, that's our right. That's our birthright. We've been doing that since the Union was formed, right? But if you do that in the middle of a pandemic, you create health risks for other people, right? And there are limits. There are limits to our freedoms, right? So for freedom of speech, for example, in the United States, we have freedom of speech, but there are limits. I cannot go into a movie theater and yell fire when there is no fire. Because if I do, everyone will rush towards the door. There will be a stampede. People will run over people. People will be injured. Some might die. And this has happened, in theaters in our history. And so they made a law that says you cannot yell fire in a crowded theater if there is none, right? So that's a limitation on your freedom of speech. You cannot threaten the life of the president in the United States. Even though you can say a lot of things, you cannot make a threat against the life of the president. That's another limitation on your freedom. Well, during a pandemic, can you go out and protest? and violate this, social distancing regime? And can you disregard the laws of the state that you live in and open your business if you want to open it when the state tells you you must close? This is this tension that we will have between civil liberties and individual rights that this country is known for and is one of our greatest strengths. In a pandemic, it's not always a strength. It can be a weakness. So it's very interesting when you think about this, how, something that, innovation and freedom of thought and freedom of action, these are the hallmarks of the American economy. These are the great American dream, the tools that allow you to pursue the great American dream. And so we look at them as clear and obvious strengths, right? And so we don't understand why in certain situations they can actually create a weakness, right? So China, for example. China was able to lock down the city of Wuhan and surrounding provinces and 60 million people with a quarantine, right? Try doing that in the United States. You wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, Governor Cuomo brought in the National Guard to try to create a quarantine in a little part of New York, like a 1 mile radius where they saw a cluster forming. And, it was hell for him to deal with that.
When this whole COVID-19 thing happened, I've never seen something that moves so fast. I remember what happened with the global financial crisis with subprime in 2007 to 2009. A lot of that was around the big investment banks and things that had been too aggressive and packaged off these different, products and things that they had and were being too greedy. This one, I have never seen something move so fast with so much conflict around the data that had come through. Do you think when all that happened and you see footage of warehouses and hotels around the world being set up with hospital beds and conversations around ventilators, when your average citizen doesn't really know much at all about ventilators? I certainly didn't prior to all this happening. Do you think and then you see places like San Francisco being very strict with how they handle it, and other places, I believe it was somewhere in Florida where they're like, you're still doing spring break. Do you feel that the response in the US has been fair? And, another thing we could bring in here is how hospitals are incentivized to put people on ventilators and to mark things up as COVID, even if they are exhibiting some symptoms but haven't officially been diagnosed as having COVID-19. What's your take on the whole response of what we're in?
So we've made a lot of mistakes and we've done some good things. And you need to look at each action and you need to critique each action and determine whether or not it was wise. And so, many are saying that the cure of shutting down the economy is worse than the disease because it's ravaged our economy. We've got 20 plus million people that are on unemployment. It's putting a lot of people out of business permanently. It's causing a lot of emotional trauma. We've probably got increased suicides. We've got increased divorces. We've got
violence.
Increased domestic violence. So there are dangers in this type of full court press response where you're trying to flatten the curve. The reason for the sense of urgency and the reason for the speed at which these decisions were made is that it had to be made in that time frame, because the COVID-19 pandemic expands at an exponential rate. So 1 becomes 3. One person infects, say, 3 people. There was a recent thing in South Korea that a man was jumping from different bars, bar to bar to bar, and it was believed to have been in contact with as many as 1,500 people. And he had COVID-19. And so instead of 3, one person infects 3, you have outliers where one person goes to a packed stadium at a football game or a nightclub or a concert, and they infect many more people. So, number 1, the exponential rate of increase is something that causes the virus to spike very quickly. So if you played out on a chessboard and you took all the squares on a chessboard, and each time you went from 1 to 3, from 3 to 9, right? From 9 to 18. If you kept even doubling, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, even doubling, by the time you get to the end of the chessboard, you have over a trillion, a number that's over a trillion. Okay? That's the power of doubling and an exponential increase. With COVID-19, they believe the number is more than 1 goes to 2. They believe that it could be 1 to 3. Some estimates are higher. With that kind of an increase, it doesn't take long at all. Within a matter of weeks, the numbers just start to compound and they get out of control. So, and when you get into the bigger numbers, then a doubling of 20 million is 40 million. That can happen in like a 3 to 5 day period, going from 20 million to 40 million, right? So you don't have time to react. You don't have time to delay. You have to act. You have to flatten the curve, right?
The risk of getting it wrong is so severe, it's just not worth even entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. It's so severe that you just can't take the chance. So there's that issue. Then there's the issue of, people saying, well, you're just flattening the curve. You're not really eliminating the disease, because once we open up, all these things can happen again. And we're right back to where we were. So what good did it do, right? Maybe we should just have herd immunity. Maybe we should just let everybody get sick and we should have herd immunity, okay? So, these are all discussions that scientists are having. And there are a number of things to consider among these things. First of all, if you don't control the curve, you will have a spike that will go up so rapidly that no healthcare system in the world could handle it. Okay? So your hospitals would be completely overrun. This was beginning to happen. This happened in Italy. This was beginning to happen in New York. But because they took such quick action to flatten the curve, they built up all these beds because they were expecting that they were going to need it all. And had they not flattened the curve, and had people not stayed home, and had they not social distanced, and had they not practiced good hygiene, all those beds would have been filled, and many more. And many more would have died. So this was necessary. It's necessary to practice social distancing, practice good hygiene, shelter at home when possible, to maintain a lower curve and to avoid a spike, because the spike will be the most destabilizing thing that could occur to us, okay? Not only will it make our hospitals completely overrun, but it will contaminate most of our doctors and medical workers and first responders and police, and all of a sudden they'll be out. And then you'll have more deaths. And then people who need to get into those hospitals for a heart transplant or a heart attack or be on kidney dialysis or whatever their ailment is, those people won't be able to get in. In places like San Francisco, they've got a significant homeless population. They've got 60,000 homeless in your city, in LA. These people are living in unsanitary conditions. They're living in close proximity to one another. They are shedding the disease through fecal matter, by defecating in the streets and on the sidewalks. And, I was at a hotel. I was staying at the Clift in San Francisco, which is a very nice hotel. And I was walking literally 6 blocks to a restaurant. And I had to walk through neighborhoods that I was fearful of being in those neighborhoods. It's like a checkerboard. You don't know, in San Francisco, you're in a great neighborhood one minute, and the next minute you're in a horrible neighborhood. And some of those horrible neighborhoods are filled with homeless people who are shedding. And some of the people that are walking to the restaurants are walking through those neighborhoods, or walking to their office, or walking through those neighborhoods, and they're getting that stuff on their feet. And then they're tracking it into their hotel, or they're tracking it into their office. And then it's spreading. And these contaminations are spreading. And so it's a very dangerous situation. And people are dying from it. It depends on now also, how vulnerable you are is what kind of a category are you in? You're a very healthy, younger guy. You're probably in a relatively low risk category. Okay. I'm 62 years old. I'm in a high risk category. I have had a heart attack. In 2012, I had a heart attack. I am not diabetic, but I have high sugar levels. I have high blood pressure. I'm on high blood pressure medication. I have a bit of an asthma condition. My lungs, I've had pneumonia when I was in my 30s. I'm in a high risk category. So, people like me, it doesn't matter what the government tells me. I'm not going out to restaurants. I'm not going to concerts. I'm not going to conventions. I'm sheltering at home, And most of the people that I know who are my age feel that way. You don't have to tell them, they can't go out. They're just not going. So that's going to impact restaurants. It's already devastating the restaurant industry. And I'm in the restaurant business. I'm the chairman of the board of a company called Capriati's. We have over 100 stores in 20 states that we've had to close. And the economic consequences of closing that have been horrendous. And I would love to have my stores open. I would love to reopen for business, right? But even now that the government has said that we could reopen our restaurants, our corporate restaurants here in Las Vegas, we've made the decision to continue to keep them closed right now. Now, we will eventually open them, and we hope to open them, but we're watching this very closely. Now, how do you deal with this as a business person? This is a big issue, right? A lot of people are failing. A lot of people are not able to deal with it. A lot of businesses will close permanently. Fine dining is a business who has seen better days, right? And the days ahead are not necessarily going to be that good for them, okay? Because as long as we're living in a world where these issues come to pass, people are going to be more careful about going out to restaurants and sitting near other people. And fine dining has taken a huge hit. They're down like 90%. And many of them are going to go out of business. Certain events like Cirque du Soleil closed. Incredible company, magnificent company, performances all over the world. The NBA had to shut down, right? So, all of these companies that are in businesses that rely on large quantities of people to be in close proximity are required to pivot and adapt to these changing circumstances. So at Capriati's, what we've done is we've migrated online, and we've done it very effectively and very quickly. And so we're not down 90% like that, like fine dining, or 60 to 70% like family dining, or 30 to 40% like quick service restaurants like our competitors. We are down, but we're only down 14%. We're down 14% because we immediately moved our operations. Everyone in corporate, over 100 employees, went virtual. Nobody showed up at the office. They're all working from home. That was immediate. We've cut our salaries by 25% across the board. We have increased our advertising dollars on online media and on online delivery. And we've shifted our focus to online delivery. We're opening up ghost kitchens. Ghost kitchens are a new phenomenon in the franchise and quick service restaurant space, where you take an industrial building and someone goes into that industrial building and they build out, let's say, 50 kitchens. And these are full service kitchens, but they have no seating for customers. No customers entered this industrial space.
So less space to pay for, yeah.
Yeah, so we rent the space. We rent a kitchen in a ghost kitchen, and we go in and we create our food, and then we go online and we promote our food, and then we have Uber and Grubhub and DoorDash come and drive and come to the industrial warehouse, and they pick up the food and they deliver it to our customers. And this reduces our overhead, right? We don't have to pay for inline retail. We don't have to pay for A or B commercial real estate. We're at a much smaller footprint in terms of the space that we require. We have much fewer employees that are required, and we pay much lower rent. So as a consequence, we can be profitable. We can have a business that works in a pandemic, that makes money, where we take our existing business model and we pivot into a new mode of delivery and service for our customers, right? Where we can guarantee safety and quality. We have everybody wearing masks, wearing gloves, we sanitize, we do everything that you can state of the art to protect our customers. We have deliveries with masks and gloves, and we pivot. So this is what people are going to have to do. People are going to have to pivot and adapt to a changing environment. The rules of the game have changed. And there's no sense moaning about it or crying over spilt milk or saying, woe is me, or thinking about how difficult it's going to be. You just need to do it. Now, that sounds easier said than done, and it is. It's much easier to think about how difficult it is, right? We could spend all day, you and I, thinking about how difficult it is. Or we could spend all day thinking about what opportunities has this pandemic created for me and my business and my family. And that's what I'm advising people to do. I'm advising people to find opportunity in adversity. Retain your hopefulness and your sense of aspiration. The game's not over. The rules have changed. The landscape and the playing field has changed. The competitors have changed. But the game's not over.
I really love that. Yeah.
Get into the game. Get back into the game. Okay? And pivot and adapt and thrive.
You get people in situations like this where they feel that panic and they spend all their time watching the news, and that leads to inaction, which is a big thing that I've been talking about on this show for the last few episodes. But having an awareness that there is opportunity in every single adversity. So thank you for sharing that story about some of the practical things that you're doing on that side, because a lot of people who had listened to what we were talking about, for the first part of this interview might have been very pessimistic about the future. So what I wanted to ask you, I know that you're an optimist and you've got all these amazing things in Millennial Samurai too. How optimistic or pessimistic should people be about the future when we've got all these different things that are happening? We've got pandemics, we've got everything happening on automation.
Well, let me tell you this. I'm excited. Okay? Not everybody is. But leaders don't run from challenges. Leaders run at them. Okay? So I look at this. You can look at it as a glass half empty, or you can look at it as a glass half full. And it's mindset. And here's you all know the downside. Let's talk a little bit about the upside. You are living in the most extraordinary period in human history. How lucky for you. You are living in the most extraordinary period in human history. You will see more dramatic change. You will see things that you can't even fathom, that you can't even comprehend. Stephen Hawking, theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking, in 2014, before he died, he said that the singularity, the moment in time when machine intelligence eclipses human intelligence, would be the greatest event in human history. Greater than fire, greater than the wheel, greater than space travel, greater than the internet, greater than anything that man has ever experienced. Ray Kurzweil, who's the head of artificial intelligence for Google, the guy that Bill Gates says knows more about artificial intelligence than anyone he knows, Ray Kurzweil tells us that the singularity may come as early as 2029. That's 10 years away. You and I will be alive to witness the greatest event in human history. That's something to celebrate, okay? Now, Kurzweil goes on to say that by the 2040s, which is 20 to 30 years away, we're 2020 today, 20 years from now will be 2040. 30 years from now will be 2049. Okay. And Kurzweil says that by the 2040s, 20 to 30 years away, artificial intelligence will no longer be our equal. It will be a billion times more capable than human intelligence. Now, you and I, our mind, our human intelligence, lacks the ability to even comprehend what that means. We can't even comprehend what a world that is a billion times our intelligence will look like. But Kurzweil says that by that time, 20 to 30 years from now, our neural cortex will be connected to the cloud. That we won't have to go on our phone. So when I was a kid, I had to go to the library to find the answer to a question. Today, I go to my phone. My phone has 100,000 times the computing power that NASA had in 1969 when they put men on the moon. In order to put men on the moon, they needed a room filled with computers. Now imagine me going back 50 years to 1969 with this phone and saying to these scientists, these cutting-edge scientists at NASA, saying, hey guys, 50 years from now, everybody's going to have one of these in their back pocket, and it has 100,000 times the computing power of everything you got in this room. And everybody's got one. I'm here from the future, right? They would have said, you're out of your mind. Put this guy in a sanitarium, right? He doesn't know what he's talking about, right? Futurists say that when someone talks about the future, if it doesn't sound like science fiction, they don't know what they're talking about, okay? So now take yourself 20, 30, 40, or 50 years from now, and technology is increasing at an exponential rate. We talked about an exponential progression with the pandemic. Well, technology is also increasing at this exponential rate. So Moore's law, a guy named, I forget his first name, Roger Moore maybe, or no, it wasn't Roger Moore, something else. He was one of the guys at Intel, Gordon Moore. Gordon Moore came up with Moore's law. And Moore's law, 50 years ago, Gordon Moore predicted that computers would double in power and cut in half in price every 18 to 24 months. For the past 50 years, Moore's law has proven true. Kurzweil is now looking at Moore's law and saying that he doesn't think it just applies to computers. He thinks it applies to human evolution. And he thinks that man is going to evolve into a machine. And that this is part of our evolutionary path. And that the speed at which that is going to happen is going to happen more quickly than the last 50 years. What we've seen happen over the last 50 years may happen over the next 20 years or less, right? So it will increase in speed. And then it will increase again, and it will continue to increase. So, we don't know where all of this is going. But we do know this. We know that it's going to be extraordinary. We know that it's going to be extraordinary. And you can either be frightened by it or you can be excited by it. I choose to be excited by it. Now, part of the reason that I'm excited about it is because I'm learning. I've developed a love of learning. And so I read constantly. I do everything I can to better myself and my mind and to become smarter. And so I feel that I'm going to be equipped to deal with this future better than most, okay? And you have that option as well. Everyone watching this has that option. I'm not, some extraordinary genius that just, my brain's bigger than yours. It doesn't work that way. Science has told us that we have the ability to control our IQ, okay? We didn't used to know that. Neuroscientists used to believe that you had a fixed IQ, that you were born with a certain number of brain cells and you died, give or take, with that number of brain cells. And if they tested your IQ at 12 and they tested it at 60, it would be the same. It would be very much the same. They now know that that's not true. You have the power. You have the ability to both control your thoughts. Harvard neuroanatomist Jill Bolte Taylor does a great TED Talk on this, called The Anatomy of the Teenage Brain. You have the ability to control your thoughts, and you have the ability to increase your IQ. Okay? But it requires work. You have to go out and educate yourself. You can't just sit around and not read and not watch the news and not learn anything and think that you're going to be fine, because you're not. And that's just a cold, hard reality.
Like a muscle that atrophies if you don't use it.
Exactly. Your brain is a muscle. Your brain is a muscle. And if you don't use it, you'll lose it. It will atrophy like any other muscle. So you need to exercise it. The secret to surviving and thriving throughout the 21st century is, number one, have an awareness. Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook said that we cannot change that which we are unaware of. But once we are aware, we cannot help but change. Okay? So number one, you need awareness, right? You need to be aware of a technological tsunami so that you can move to higher ground, right? So that you're not wiped out by it, right? So I'm trying to create awareness. I'm trying to let you know what's coming so that you can be prepared. That awareness is important. It's critical, okay? You need to have an open mind. You need to open up your mind. Why? Because a closed mind can't learn, okay? A mind, Frank Zappa once said, a mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it isn't open, okay? So you need to be open and receptive to new information. You need to understand how the human brain works, right? How your brain works, how other people's brains work, so that you understand why different people have different ideas and different perspectives and different positions, why one guy wants to open up the economy and why the other guy wants to close it down. Why? Why do they think differently? Why do they see the world differently? And what can you learn from that, right? Well, you may see it a certain way, and you may be convinced that the way you see it is the right way, because that's what your brain is telling you. Well, that's what his brain is telling him, and that's what he sees. Now, you were both given the same hardware. Essentially, you were both given a brain, just like I was given a brain. Mine's not very different than yours, okay? But the software that we all have is different, because the input that we all have is different. I read voraciously. I devour information, right? If you devour information, you will improve your software, okay? So you need to study and you need to read. Now, what do you read and how do you study, right? Well, what are you looking for? You're looking for breakthrough knowledge. You're looking for knowledge that can transform your life. Okay, so how do you find that? In a sea of information, in information overload, right? So we have massive amounts of information, and you're looking for breakthrough knowledge. You're looking for these nuggets that are going to change your life. How do you find them, right? In a sea of information and disinformation. Well, okay, so you have to be smart about how you read and what you read, okay? You're not reading for confirmation of what you already know, okay? You're looking for disconfirming evidence. You're looking for things that tell you that what you think is true is actually not true, okay? Science progresses through disconfirming information. I do tests over and over again, and it works until all of a sudden it doesn't. Well, why didn't it work? What was wrong? What ingredients was I missing? What did I miss here? What is this other information that is important for me to know the difference between why the experiment succeeded or why it failed? It's that piece of information that I'm looking for, right? So that I can fix that issue, and it will always work, and it will never fail, right? So I've written a book, and it's called Millennial Samurai. And what I've done is I've created what I think is a resource, a very valuable, important resource for people. And I think that it will change people's lives. If I were to die tomorrow, the thing that I'm most proud of is not having served as Attorney General, not having argued before the United States Supreme Court to a unanimous, successful verdict, but having created this toolkit that I'm leaving to my family, to my daughter, to my nieces and nephews, and that I'm making available for free online. You can download a free digital copy of this 444-page book for free. Okay, you go to millennialsamurai.com and you can download it for free. Now, why do you want to do that, and why do you want to read it? Because this book is me spending the last 5 years reading everything, finding what I think are the nuggets of information that you and my daughter and my nephews and nieces need to know, and putting them all in one easy-to-read place. Okay? So it's divided. It's very easy to read. You will enjoy the hell out of it. You'll love reading it. It's very easy to read. It's broken down into small chapters. The chapters are only 1 to 3 pages each. Okay? So the chapters are only 1 to 3 pages each. Here's a chapter called The Bystander Effect. Okay? Why do people stand by when somebody's getting beaten up in the middle of the street or murdered in the middle of the street, and everybody stands around and doesn't do anything? Well, there have been studies on this. Wouldn't you like to know why they stand around? How to build consensus, right? Right? So we have a highly polarized society. Wouldn't you like to know how to build consensus? Artificial intelligence, it's going to change your life. 1 to 3 pages on each of these chapters will make you know more than 99% of the American public about that subject. You won't know more about artificial intelligence than Ray Kurzweil or Bill Gates or anybody like that after reading this. But you'll know more than all your neighbors. You'll know more than all the other people at work, okay? And that's enough. That's enough to give you a competitive edge. That's enough for you to have engaging conversations with your employer and with your prospective employer. That's enough to make you think about new business opportunities, to make you, there are chapters like finding opportunity in adversity, overcoming your fear, understanding your fear. I mean, all of these things, tribalism, understanding cognitive dissonance, understanding motivated reasoning, why you reason yourself into a conclusion that it's based on your prior understanding of facts, and why you set up hurdles to new information that conflicts with your existing worldview and allow information that conforms to your existing worldview to come in, right? Why do you do that? Why does your brain do that? Outside of your conscious awareness, right? We have 11 million bits of information that impact our brain every second of the day. Our conscious brain can only process 15 to 50 bits of information per second. So that means the vast majority of information that's coming into your brain is coming in outside of your conscious awareness, right? Now think about the Amazon algorithm at the Washington Post and how these articles can be used to manipulate you. How media today, how you watch one news station and it tells you the world is this way, and you watch another station and it tells you, oh, no, the world is this way, right? How do you know who's telling the truth? How do you figure that out? Well, there's a chapter on critical thinking that tells you how to approach these issues. So these are tools. These are tools. If I were to drop you off in the middle of the Amazon rainforest and I were going to give you a duffel bag, we all know the types of things I would put in that duffel bag. Well, if I'm going to drop you off or my daughter off in the middle of the 21st century, this is the tool bag that I've created for my family. And I'm offering it to you for free. Why? Because I think it's the answer to society's problems. I think that if I can make you smarter, and if you go on and follow my lead, so what am I doing? I'm helping others. I'm helping you. Now, if you model me and you go off and help the next guy, and you share this information with them, and we all become smarter, we're all going to do much better, right? I'm going to do better. My daughter's going to do better. Everybody's going to do better because we'll all be behaving more rationally. We'll all be making better decisions. We'll all be more hopeful and aspirational. We'll all be better at solving problems. This, to me, is the answer, especially in the absence of a complete reform of our education system, which I think is also required. But I'm not holding my breath for that. I'm not waiting for that to happen. I don't think that that's going to happen, ever. So we're going to have to help each other. Humanity, this is the biggest thing that I can, there are two things that I would leave you that are the most important things. Number one, understand that humanity is profoundly interdependent, okay? You are not an island unto yourself. The guy in the grocery store who's not wearing a mask affects you and your family. You're not alone, okay? The guy who coughs on you, the guy who marches, and forms rallies in the middle of a pandemic. These people all affect your life, okay? So we need to make them all smarter. We need to make them all smarter. And the public education system's not going to do it. And the government's not going to do it. And private profit-driven business isn't going to do it, okay? So who's going to do it? You've got to do it. You've got to do it. I've got to do it. We've all got to do it. So number one, understand our profound interdependence. And number two, understand the critical importance of an open mind.
Do you feel that, sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say, just a visual. Pretend that you're jumping out of a plane and you're plummeting towards the ground, because the speed at which you would fall is equivalent to the speed of the technological tsunami that's on the horizon. Now, you have a parachute. You got a parachute with you, but it doesn't work if it isn't open. Your parachute is your brain. That's what's going to save you. Your brain's going to save you, but it's got to be open, and you've got to fill it with good information, and you got to get rid of all the false information. And you only do that like you build a muscle going to the gym. You have to work on it, okay?
It's a great reminder that we all have within us everything that we need to succeed, regardless of what sort of happened in our past too. Do you think there's a time when we see, given now that media outlets and things, it's run on advertising revenue, and you're talking about algorithms and machines that can create articles that are going to drive that sensationalist thing to boost revenue and ad revenue for these companies? Do you think we ever see a time where we are united again?
I sure hope so. Yeah. I sure hope so, because I believe that division is the greatest existential threat that humanity faces. It's, global warming. The Democratic candidates were all on stage and they were talking about global warming is an existential threat. Global warming is an existential threat. Well, you know what? It probably is. It probably is. But it's not going to kill any of us for the next 20 years. Division is what created the Civil War. The Civil War killed more Americans than all other battles combined, all other world wars combined. And it wasn't only about slavery. It was about the difference between what rights we enjoy. The federal government versus the state government. Does the state have the right to decide that it wants slavery? Or does the federal government have the right to say no? Does a state get to open for business? Or does the federal government have a right to say no? These differences of opinion can also lead to a civil war, okay? Especially in a situation like a pandemic where you have millions of people out of work. I mean, we have 22 million people out of work. We have 25% of the American public out of work. This has never happened before except during the Great Depression. And so people do not starve in silence. And especially Americans, okay? We're not some third world country that, people are used to living in poverty and the government can get away with whatever it wants to get away with. Americans are empowered, they're entitled, they're aware, They've been told they've got rights.
The land of the free, the land of opportunity.
and the home of the brave. And they're not going to just sit back. So we need to recognize that united we stand, and divided we get torn apart. Divided we fall. So we need to be united. And clever actors who would like to see nothing better than for America to fall, those actors will use social media to try to create division and to destabilize America. We saw this during the 2016 election. We saw Russia using Facebook to try to interfere with our elections. But this was just a small incursion. What if it's a larger incursion? What if they're using these algorithms like Amazon talks? What if they have us tearing apart at the seams and destroying the fabric of the country because they've divided us over social and political and economic issues, guns, global warming, universal basic income, economic inequality, whatever the issue, we got huge issues that we're dealing with. In order to solve those issues, and they're all solvable, all of the problems that confront us are solvable and manageable, but we have to be united. We have to cherry pick the best ideas. This is why I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I would never join the Republican Party or the Democratic Party today. I don't want to have anything to do with either one of them. Okay? I want independent, critical thinkers to join together and to look at the Republican Party and say, you know what? What ideas do you have that are good ideas? And look at the Democratic Party and say, what ideas do you have that are good ideas? And let's cherry pick the ideas from each of you. And let's create a country that serves all 335 million of us. Not that serves half of us, not that half of us are happy with, but that we're all happy with, right? That's what we need.
It's such what
I want to see.
It's such a great message rather than for us to win, somebody else has to lose mentality. Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point.
All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Well, at this stage, let's get into what we call the Win the Day rocket round, where we go through 10 questions for really, really quick answers to get into. This is where we get to know the real you, George. Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
All right. Question number one. What quote?
We don't have answers.
Question number one. What quote inspires you the most?
Only those who dare to fail greatly can ever hope to achieve greatly. Robert F. Kennedy.
Love it. All right. Morning coffee or evening wine?
Evening wine.
What's one bit of advice you would give your 18-year-old self?
Take care of your health.
Very important. What book do you gift the most? I guess that's Millennial Samurai.
Yeah. This look, I could list a number of other books, but there's no better book that I want you to read or that I think you need to read than this book. And you go to millennialsamurai.com and you download it for free, and you do it now.
We'll include a link to that in the show notes as well. So thank you very much, George, for that very generous gift.
And if you have a young child who's younger than 18 or younger than 16, they could be 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 years old, then go to Amazon.com and get this book for them, Seize Your Destiny, A Roadmap to Success. This is a great primer for a young person, a very young person. Anyone could get something out of this, 8 to 80. But I wrote this specifically when my daughter was 16 years old, and it's for that audience primarily. Great book for them. But for anybody that's over 16, Millennial Samurai.
Love it. Was there a vulnerability you once hid within that became your superpower?
Wow, vulnerability that I once hid within that became my superpower. I think my openness to information and my open mind is not something that I always displayed or always showed. So, for example, when I was a Republican, I wasn't talking like I'm talking today. I wasn't saying everything that really needs to be said. And so, and I think that is my superpower today. I think that saying everything that needs to be said is liberating. It's just, it's right. And it is my superpower today.
I love it because it helps encourage others to think for themselves too, which is really, really important. Yeah, fantastic. What's one thing you've learned about failure?
Failure is the best teacher in the world. Best teacher in life. You'll learn a lot of things throughout your life, but nothing, absolutely nothing will teach you as well as failure. Because you'll remember those lessons. You'll never forget them.
If you could sit on a park bench and have a conversation with someone, alive or dead, who would it be?
Abraham Lincoln.
Any reason for Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah, because we'd be talking about division and unity.
Yeah, be a good time for him to come back.
I think that's the most existential threat facing the world today, and he's the guy who I'd want to talk to about it.
What tool or resource best helps you run your life or your business?
Well, right now it's probably my phone, because I've become more of an author and a speaker and a social media influencer today. And so that whole engagement with social media is something that I had never done before. It's all new to me. And I don't typically do it off my laptop. I do it off my phone, and I have my phone with me everywhere. And, they say that you touch your face and you touch your phone both 2,000 times a day. I definitely have a bit of a phone addiction, but it's an essential tool for me today.
It's a bittersweet situation, isn't it, with phones?
Yeah, it is.
Especially when you have kids and things too. You realize that when you're in the middle of a moment, it's like your instinct is not always to enjoy the moment. It's to reach for your phone and capture it. But capture it for what? This is the moment that should be enjoyed.
Exactly.
What's one thing?
I find myself doing that.
Yeah. What's one thing on your bucket list?
I want to see the Great Wall of China. I've traveled all over the world quite extensely, but there are still some places that I haven't been that I want to go. I want to go to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. I want to go to some unusual places where the power of nature, the enormity of nature and history can have an impact on me. I read this great article about this guy who walked across the Sahara Desert, a portion of the desert, like this massive 16-mile stretch of nothing but desert. And he walked through the whole thing, and it took him, however many days or weeks to get through the whole thing. And he talks about, walking through the desert and coming upon a sand dune that was more than 100 feet high. And he would have to climb up that sand dune. Now imagine you're walking on this 16-mile journey through this, Sahara Desert, and you come upon this you're looking up and it's like a huge wave and you've got to climb over it. You don't know what's on the other side. Might be another wave, just like the one you just got over, right? And he said that he prayed, and he said that he asked God to just let him live through this experience, and that he would share with the world the enormity of nature, the power of nature, that he would talk about the power of nature and how infinitesimal we are in the face of nature. So I'd like to be exposed to more of those types of experiences. I'd like to do anything that essentially broadens my mind and broadens my experience. I've always felt that way. Even as a young man, I wanted to have as many experiences as possible. I think that's very important. That's why I've traveled all over the world. is because I've wanted to have new experiences. I haven't been to Australia, and I definitely want to go to Australia. I've heard wonderful, wonderful things about it.
If you like nature and the outdoors, it's great. We're a very young country, though. There was someone who moved to Australia from Europe, and she was really excited to learn more about our culture. And it was like, well, we are a very, very young country with buildings and things. So it's hard for someone from Europe, where civilizations are thousands of years old, to come to Australia and appreciate our architecture and things like that. But outdoors and nature and animals is a beauty. I feel like it can't be beat.
Yeah, well, it's a gorgeous city, and everybody that's been there has just raved about it. Do you have an audience in Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of Aussies, probably 50% of people listening will be in Australia.
Okay, well, if anybody's out there in Australia and they need a speaker, I would love to come to Australia. So if somebody wants to send me a ticket to come out and speak to their group, if we still have groups, I would come. I might not come right now because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but when this is all over, if you want somebody to speak, I would love to come to Australia.
He's amazing on stage as well. So just give him a reason to get on that plane and come to Australia.
Yeah, reach out to me on social media.
Awesome. And last question. What's one thing you do to win the day?
One thing I do every day to win the day?
Yeah.
I roll over in the morning and I kiss my wife, and that starts me off with a great day, and I have a moment of gratitude where I think about what I have to be grateful for, and she's certainly one of the things I have to be grateful for. So I just I try to begin my day with gratitude and with optimism. And fortunately, I'm doing what I love, so I do. I wake up every morning. I can't wait to learn something new. I can't wait to get online and start reading, whether I'm reading Medium or I'm reading Quora, I'm reading Axios, or I'm reading the New York Times, or whatever I'm happening to read. I love doing it. I love learning. And so gratitude and lifelong learning, I guess, would be the things that are key.
A passion for what you're doing, yeah, it's so important. And gratitude, every morning I take a photo of the 5-minute journal that I use, where you write down 3 things that you're grateful for. And yeah, because I think it's important for people to see that we're not just talking about gratitude, that we're also doing it. It's a very powerful way, isn't it, of just resetting and thinking about what's most important in your life.
One of the things that I learned that I hadn't known my whole life, but that I learned over the last several years is how incredibly powerful gratitude is. It just changes. It changes the way you view the world. If you look at what you have, and no matter what it is, you see kids in playing in the dirt in Africa or Egypt or wherever, and they're poor, and they don't have any toys, and they're kicking around maybe a deflated soccer ball, if they even have that. Maybe it's a can, but they're laughing and they're having fun, and they're able to have a great life with nothing. They're able to have moments that are great with nothing. And so we can all have those moments. The world is still extraordinary. Your life is still extraordinary. You think about children, right? So interesting things about children. Number one, you look at a child, and if you have a child of your own, or you've been around children, what an exciting thing it is when they experience something for the first time, right? So you take them out in the rain, and they've never been in the rain. Or you take them out to the snow, and they've never seen the snow. Or they see a mirror as a baby for the first time. And there's this amazement. There's this sense of delight. There's this glow and this smile in their faces. It's still raining, folks. The snow's still falling. And that mirror is still there for you to take a look in. And so these miracles, they're still there. It's just that your perception of them has changed. And you need to go back to that childhood perception where you're grateful for everything because it's all new and it's all exciting. And so that's something to think about. And then also think about how children learn. Children, if you want to learn a foreign language, they tell you learn it when you're a child, because it'll be much easier for you. You'll learn it much more quickly. Why is that? Why is it that child's minds are like sponges, right? Because they're open. They're open. They don't know anything. So it's all new. So they're letting it all come in. They're not screening it. They're not rejecting it. They're just letting it all come in, And so we can learn from children,
Yeah, having a 1-year-old now, it's incredible. Literally, she took her first steps about 3 weeks ago, and then now watching just the look on her face when she can put 8 to 10 steps together, or she loves dancing and also has this roar like she's a lion cub. It is fascinating, isn't it? Just going on this journey of becoming intensely curious about the world again through the lens of a child with all the experiences that you mentioned.
Exactly. You'll get to go back on the playground. You haven't been on the playground for a long time.
That's right.
When she goes on the playground at school, and their first day of school, you're going to get to go on the playground and hang out on the playground again. Yeah. That's going to bring back some memories.
Absolutely. My wife always says I'm a big kid anyway, so I don't think the transition will be too harsh for me.
It's wonderful. Greatest thing.
Yeah. Well, George, where can people go to learn more about you and keep in touch?
They can go to georgejchanos.com and George J. Chanos on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. They can go to millennialsamurai.com. I'm all over social media. If you could spell out my name, George J. Chanos on your post, then they'll be able to know how to spell it and connect with me. I love to interact and communicate with followers, especially if they've read the book. I'd like to know what you think. I'd very much like to know what you think. And if it's changing your life and it's having an impact, please let me know, because that's what I'm doing this for, and that's what drives me. And I need inspiration too. We all do. And when I hear from you, and you tell me that the book is changing your life, it means a lot to me. It really means a lot to me. And I'm going to have to write another one soon, so I need motivation. And if I keep hearing from people, that's the kind of motivation. I'll tell you, when I wrote this book, on the back, there's a quote from a young man named Rafael Delgado. And it says, "I grew up in a broken home, raised by a single mom who had trouble keeping the lights on. Your book spoke to me like the father I never had. Great insights. I couldn't agree more with you. Thank you for writing it." It's messages like that I get in emails or that people post on my page that make me know that I'm on the right path. It's like if I were traveling down a path and there was a sign that says, turn left or go this way. These are my signs. These are the things that say to me, okay, you're doing what you need to do. You're making the most of your one and only life. You're on the right path. This is the path to keep walking down. And so your feedback means something to me. So please share it with me.
We'll include a link to all those channels in the show notes as well. So everyone listening and watching, go and connect with George. But thank you so much for being here and sharing all your incredible wisdom.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I hope that we can change some lives. I mean, you're helping to create awareness. You're doing exactly what needs to be done. You're helping people every day. So thank you for the stuff that you're doing and the messages that you're giving people and the way you're inspiring people and enriching them and speaking to them about the same issues that I'm speaking to them about.
Just letting them know that everything they have to succeed, as you said, is already, they've already got it, and to be excited about, and no matter what is happening in the present, that you can always be excited and optimistic about creating whatever future you desire.
That's the end of our chat with George, and I hope you found it as powerful as I did. Fortune favors the brave, and it's the perfect time to start upskilling so you can take advantage of all the opportunities at a time when most people are doing the opposite. Remember to connect with George via the links in the show notes and grab a free copy of his new book, Millennial Samurai. If you want to be the first to hear about interviews when they are released, hit subscribe, and if you enjoyed this conversation, hit the like button and share it with a friend or a loved one so they can benefit too. That's all for episode 27. Remember to get out there and win the day. Until next time, onwards and upwards, always.